Hey there, kings and queens. Welcome back to another episode of Faith Helps, and I'm your host, Diamond. You should know that by now, first off. Let's just start right there. And I need a studio, y'all. I need a studio. And it's ironic that I'm starting this particular episode with what I need and what I want, being that's exactly what I want to talk about today. But before we get into that, I'm going to take my time with this one. First off, as you can see, I'm in a different chair because I got feedback from some of you guys who said you can hear the chair move because I move a lot when I'm doing these episodes. So we're going to try this out. Gonna be honest, I don't like it so far. But I'm going to try for y'all. I'm going to try. We'll see how it goes. But anyway, as I was saying, what I wanted to talk about is exactly what I started off with, what I want. I need a studio. I just got this office. And the reason why that stood out to me is it's funny because the thing I wanted to bring up today is how so many people ask God for more and they're not actually ready for it. So rewind a couple weeks back, I had posted on TikTok a little rant I was having about people asking for exceedingly abundantly more, for God to overflow their cup and whatnot. And in actuality, they're not really ready for that type of lifestyle. They're not really ready for those type of blessings, if they're completely honest. And I wanted to take time to break that rant down and make it a little bit more helpful. So when I first started this podcast, I used to plan and prepare and write out my episodes, what thoughts were coming up to me or what revelations and insights came to me, and I would write them down so that I wouldn't forget to bring those up. And then when I shifted to starting to record my episodes, I moved away from that because I felt like aesthetically it wasn't great. However, the caveat is I would see in my videos that I say a lot, or I say like a lot, or I pause, or after the fact I'm like, that's what I wanted to bring up. That's what I wanted to suggest. And so I'm you guys are catching me where I'm kind of in this in-between space of filling it out, because I think there is a lot of value in being able to not look at notes and be able to just allow whatever to come up, even in its raw state, if it's not fully polished or as eloquent as I would like it to be. And at the same time, I see how it is beneficial to have those notes, because sometimes there are things that I feel as though God revealed to me, or I feel as though I learned about myself and it could benefit and bless someone else. And that's why I want to shift towards that. So never mind. The reason why I went on that little tangent is because if you see me looking down in this episode, is naturally I look all around when I'm talking. But if you see me in this episode in particular looking down, I'm just referencing notes. Or if I'm pausing, I'm giving myself grace today to do what feels right. And for this particular topic, I felt like it was important to not just allow this to turn into another rant, and I'm not giving substance or rationale or actual beneficial feedback that you can use to apply to your life, so you can stop seeing the same patterns and cycles that you see yourself in. This is not going to be helpful if I'm just ranting about what I feel and what I think or what I'm assuming, if you don't have substance to apply, or you're not able to transfer that into application to actually affect change into your life and create the lifestyle that you're saying that you want, and grow in the way that you say that you want to, with actual usable and palpable tools. So, as I mentioned and alluded to, today's topic is based on what happens when we ask God to do exceedingly and abundantly more in our lives, but we're actually not ready for that. So, granted, I want to preface this. There is nothing wrong with asking God for more. That is not what this episode is about. This episode is not to tear people down and say that you're ungrateful and you're wrong for asking God for more. And it's certainly not to say that God isn't capable of that. We all know that He is. However, there are some questions we need to ask ourselves before we start praying for God to do the exceedingly abundantly beyond all that we could ask, think, or imagine. The first question that I would want you to ask yourself is, are you ready for more? Like, are you actually ready for more? Now, before you say, yes, Lord, shower down a blessing for me. Before you get into all that, I want you to ask yourself this next question. How are you stewarding what you already have? And I'm pausing to prompt you to pause. How are you stewarding what you already have? Whatever you're asking for more of, ask yourself, at the level that you currently have in your life, how are you stewarding those things or those people or those situations? To break that down a bit more, we need to know what stewardship means. So to steward something, I looked it up. If you've been rocking with me since the first episodes, you remember I was into definitions and I was constantly looking up stuff like, what does it actually mean? Anyway, steward means, number one, supervise arrangements and keep order. Supervise arrangements and keep order. So keeping a certain status of responsibility and maintenance over something. Now, y'all, this second definition messed me up a little bit because I was like, oh, like I was offending myself. The second definition is of steward is to manage or look after another's. First off, it was manage or look after, and then in parentheses it said another's property. I'm gonna tell you why this messed me up. So first, stay with me. That first part was to manage and look after. So you're taking care of it, whether it's nurturing or cleaning or maintaining it, meeting the needs, whatever it is, whether it's a materialistic thing or a person. How are you managing and looking after? Fill in the blank, okay? What I liked about them putting another's property into parentheses is because it sounds like another's property, and then immediately I thought, dang, what would it be like if we started taking care of the things and people in our lives as if they, with the mindset that they are God's property? What would happen if we actually start embracing this mentality for everything that we have in our proximity, every friendship, every relationship, every house, every car, every job, every client, every business, every idea, if we stewarded it as if it was God's property, if we looked after it as if it was God's property. In actuality, if we really want to be factual, everything that we see, touch, feel, is God's at the end of the day. But I'm not going to get on that debate right now. But a couple of the questions I started thinking about is, if we started seeing everything as God's property, number one, how would we steward it differently? Would we be more patient? Would we be more kind, more gentle? Would we be more loving and empathetic? Would we be more efficient? Would we be more attentive to detail? Number two, how would you steward your spouse differently? The reason I went down this route is because I started thinking about, especially since it's cuffing season, whatever that means, everyone's thinking of, so many people in my life are praying and wanting spouses. Me too, I ain't gonna lie. But how would we steward our spouses, our relationships differently if we saw them as God's property? Okay, So, for example, whoever you are, let's say you're dating somebody right now, whoever it is, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, ask yourself right now, how are you stewarding that person? And if God was to pop up on you right now, if he was to pull up, spin the block and come up right now, knock on your door, would he be happy and proud and appreciative of how you have stewarded that young woman or that young man? Would he thank you for being attentive, loving, patient, kind, gentle, respectful, honoring that that person isn't yours, but they are first and foremost God's? Would you steward differently? If yes, great, awesome. But if no, we need to reevaluate. And I'm not judging anybody, because I know for myself, in my past relationships, I had so much growing to do. Child, jeez, look gracious. I can say now, looking back, I know I didn't steward every single relationship I was in well. I know I didn't steward every single relationship that I was in as if that was God's property. There are things I would have done differently. I know for every job that I've had, I didn't steward it 100% to the best of my capability. I know sometimes I don't even steward my family as if they are God's property. Why? Because we are humans. Yes, not an excuse though, but something to keep in mind when we are thinking about how to give grace to other people, especially when we're the ones being mishandled, is people, unfortunately, because we are in this flesh suit, we respond and we react off of emotion. There are times when someone says something slick out your mouth and you're not looking at them like they God's property. You looking at them, if you're a mom, you looking at that child like, I brought you in this world and I'll take you out real quick with quick fast, right? Because our emotion is driving what we see and it clouds our vision. Something that a couple years ago I tried to start implementing in my work as a clinician is seeing my clients as God's property, no matter how disrespectful they are. Even if I've had to work with clients who were racist and said very hurtful things about me, my appearance. I've had to work with clients who were blatantly disrespectful of my time and the value that I was bringing into that therapeutic relationship. And it was very hard sometimes to remember that this is still God's child. Even when they don't identify themselves as that, they are still God's property. And when we start looking at people as God's property, if we start looking at situations and the things in our lives as God's property, you're going to start moving different, baby. I promise you, because it transformed how I started moving. And it's something that I'm still working on and uncovering and unveiling, is how I steward what I have, what God has entrusted me with. Ooh, I like that. Because sometimes we look at it as, I own this, I have this, I got this, it was gifted to me. But you were trusted with it. You were trusted with that spouse. You were trusted with that child. They get on your nerves, your everlasting nerves. I know. But you were entrusted with them. God trusted you enough to give you that son, to give you that daughter. And this is something I'll dive more into in a minute. But sometimes we forget that the very things that are frustrating us are the things that we were praying for at one point. The same child that you were holding your womb over, making the vision board for and praying over. Now that they hear and they talking back, you're starting to question whether or not they're still the blessing. You're starting to question how you treat them. You're starting to move differently. You're not looking at them as, this is the gifts, this is the blessing that I've been entrusted with, that I was at one point begging God for. We forget about that. And it's important to take a moment to reflect back on that. You know, a lot of times when we take moments to reflect back, it gives us so much revelation for where we are now. So, in essence, it's important to ask yourself, if I looked at that child, that spouse, that family member, that job, that career, that car, that house, that apartment, whatever it is, that business idea, if I looked at it as God's property, that dream and the aspiration, I think that's a chord that's being struck particularly for me, because God has been downloading so many things that he's entrusting me to bring into fruition. And there's some pressure that comes with that. And then there's also those barriers where I have to work through my own anxiety, my own insecurities, and remember who God called me to be. Even though the world and people around me are telling me something else, I have to remember what God entrusted me with. Because at the end of the day, it's not about whether or not I think I'm qualified. It's about me following up with what God already said about me and what God already entrusted me with, and stewarding those gifts, those ideas, those ambitions, those business ideas, wherever it might be, as if it's God's property and something that he entrusts me with, and remembering that everything is not just for me, it's also for someone else. Someone else is connected to that. Someone else is connected to my story. Someone else is connected to the testimony that I have. Who am I to just harbor it and hide it when God entrusted me with it, because he wanted me to share it so that someone else can receive breakthrough through it? Or he entrusted you with that business idea so that you would take the steps to bring it into fruition, because there is someone's child or someone's daughter who needs that business to be in existence 5, 6, 7 years from now. Think long term. Stop thinking so immediate, and stop thinking so self. Think of connection. Think of bigger than you, bigger than your city, bigger than your community, bigger than what you see around you. It's bigger than that. Which leads me to my second part. When you are asking God for exceedingly, abundantly, more than you can ever ask, imagine, think. Another important question to ask yourself, the second question, is can you actually handle more? So on one hand, how you're stewarding what you have already will show you if you are ready for more. But can you handle it? What I mean by that is, can your health handle it? Can your family handle it? Can your spirit handle it? Can your character handle it? So when we think about the word handle, definitions, handle means to manage, drive, so direct, and control. Sometimes we're asking God to put more on our plate and we haven't finished what's on it. We can't even handle what he already entrusted us with, but we're asking God to expand it, multiply it, double it. And you're mishandling what he gave you. And on top of that, you're not thinking about sustainability. For example, I'll use myself as an example. When I first started my meal prepping business, God expanded. I was so excited. I created all these labels, the business plan, the idea, the mission. I was so enthusiastic for it. And I still love cooking for other people. That passion isn't gone. However, when I started asking God, bring me more customers, Lord. Bring more attention to this business. I didn't know what I was praying for. And when it happened, I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready. Number one, I wasn't ready. Number two, I couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle for one, this was the first part. I was solo for the most part. I had like 1 or 2 people helping, but not in the ways that I needed the help. Okay. So for example, I was doing the cooking, doing the prepping, getting the materials, creating the prices, creating the website, delivering the meals, which by the way, sometimes required me to drive an hour away, 30, 45 minutes away. That's time. Storing the meals, making sure that everything was safe and edible and tasty and up to par and up to the standard that I wanted it to be, because I love seeing that reaction when people eat food that I made and they're like, yes, I love that. My audio listeners, you may not be able to see the reaction I gave, but go over to YouTube and see the reaction. I love that. Baby girl, you put your foot in it. I love that reaction. And so when I was starting to pray for more and for God to bring more customers to me, I kind of was losing myself. I wasn't getting enough sleep. I was constantly stressed. My other work and job, my 9 to 5 job was starting to slip. My schoolwork was starting to slip. I was half button, because I'm trying to avoid to say that word. You know what I mean. I was not fully giving my full effort to my schoolwork. So grades were not as great as they could have been, and I was procrastinating on the things I should have been doing. And on top of that, I started cutting away from things that were actually helping me maintain a mentally, emotionally, and physically healthy lifestyle. I wasn't going to the gym as much because I need to get these orders out. I need to deliver them. I need to do this. I need to do that. Part of it was I wasn't as knowledgeable in how to run a business. And then 2, I wasn't prepared for the business to actually scale when it did. God was like, oh, you want more customers? Sprinkle, sprinkle. And I couldn't even handle it. And so that's an important question to ask yourself. Can you handle what you're asking for? If you're asking for God to scale your business, okay, you're like, okay, God, scale my cosmetic business. Is your family, are your children going to be able to handle that expansion? Because that means you are going to also have to be more present, be more active. More work comes with the blessing that you're asking for. With that expansion, it's not just expanding and that's it. You maintain the same amount of effort that you're doing. No, that effort is going to have to match the new level that you're on. Can your children handle not having you as present? Can your wife and your marriage, is your marriage going to survive you being more active in your business and having to dive and put more time into being present as your business is scaling? Are you actually able to handle that? Are you able to handle it physically? Sometimes we are quick in this generation, because this world has such a hustle, grind it out, stay up 24/7 mentality, which is not healthy, not even consistent with godly values and how God tells us to steward our bodies as temples. You need the sleep. So 6 days without sleep. I'm just curious as to what that might be doing on a negative end when it comes to how your body is being stewarded. So when it comes to your health, how are you stewarding your health? When you're thinking about what you're praying for and asking God to do, can you handle it? A lot of times people, because of this hustle grind mentality, we disregard signs that our body actually can't handle what we're praying for. So we're asking God to, let me think of a different example. We're asking God for more popularity, more fame, more attention. We're asking for the stage. We're asking for more visibility and more publicity. But then we start having more migraines. We're starting to be more short-tempered with our loved ones and with our fans that we were praying for. Were you actually able to handle that escalation, that expansion, that growth? It doesn't mean that you'll never be able to, but maybe at this time you aren't able to handle it. Maybe there are some things that God's still trying to grow and work and expand in you and develop in you so that you can get to a point where you will be able to handle the more that you're asking for. One of the things that we tend to do is disregard headaches and migraines or chest tension and pain. Those are signs that your body's trying to say, hey, you're not stewarding me well. I need you to take a time out. I need you to sleep more. I need you to take care of me more. I need you to eat better. I need you to rest in between your clients that you're seeing. Whatever that is, it's different for everyone. Our body will let us know when we're not stewarding it properly. And that's important to pay attention to when you're asking yourself this question of, can you actually handle more? Physically, emotionally, mentally. You might be asking God for that husband or that wife, but you can't handle that husband or wife right now because your emotions are all over the place. You go to 0 to 100 in a second. And God already knows that the husband that he has planned for you and is preparing for you ain't going to tolerate that type of temper and emotional dysregulation. So in the season of waiting, develop yourself so that you can be prepared when God does bring the exceeding abundantly overflow into your life, that marriage, that blessing, whatever it is that you are praying for. Okay? All right, cool. Moving on. And also something that I wanted to propose to you. We talked about the emotional, the physical. I wanted to come back to the spiritual part. Can your spirit handle more? The more that you're asking for. We hear all the time how people become popular or they get fame and they lose their soul. You gain the whole world to lose your soul. What profits me, right? You need to ask yourself that and have a real honest conversation and look at what you're doing now, because how you are now with the fame, the finances, the money that you have is only going to be amplified and magnified when you get to the more that you're asking for. Whether it be greed, whether it be selfishness, whether it be arrogance, whether it be a lack of humility, that's going to expand. So are you spiritually able to handle the more that you're asking for? Maybe it hasn't happened because God knows if he does give you that position and you do blow up the way that you're praying for, you're going to switch up on people, or you're going to be even more selfish and more resentful towards people and then lose your relationship with him. And at the end of the day, nothing is worth losing your relationship and salvation over, right? Nothing is worth losing that over. Nothing is worth losing your relationship with God over. So that's important to ask yourself. Can you handle it emotionally, mentally, physically, interpersonally or socially, as far as like your family, loved ones, whoever you are responsible for and have been entrusted with? Financially, can you handle more? And physically. And now, if you are saying yes, I am ready for more, yes, I can handle for more, then show it. How do you show it? Instead of complaining about what you already have and where you already are, start showing gratitude. Instead of complaining about the apartment, start showing gratitude for that apartment. Remember when you used to pray and plead for the very thing that you are now praying and pleading away. I had to check myself one day because I was just sitting in my apartment. I look around, I'm like, dang, I'm in an apartment. I realized it had been a minute since I had been grateful for the apartment, because I couldn't wait to get out of my parents' home and live on my own. And I got used to the apartment after a couple years, and I started taking it for granted, and I wasn't grateful for it as I should have been. I wasn't stewarding it in the way that I should have been. I wasn't showing God that I was grateful for it. So part of showing God that you are actually ready for the exceeding abundant expansion, elevation that you're praying for, is to actually walk it out and show that you are stewarding and taking care of and handling and managing what you already have well. A lot of times we pray as I was saying before, we pray for the husband or wife, and then when things get a little difficult, we are ready to jump ship, and we forget that that is something that God entrusted us with, and that was a blessing that we were one day praying for and asking and pleading God for. We were fasting for it. Yes, in hard times it can be hard to remember that, and let this be a reminder to remember that. Make ways and create a pattern of gratefulness and gratitude and reflection so that you can remember it in the future. Don't let this be a one-time thing that comes across your mind. You're like, oh yeah, I need to do that more. Make a note in your phone, whatever it is, to develop a habit of gratefulness. And then another part of that is remembering that just because you no longer want what you have now doesn't mean you get to abuse it and misuse it. Just because you no longer want the car that you have now doesn't mean you just misuse it and treat it like it's trash. Because when you were walking and taking the bus and riding your bike, you were praying God for that car, and now you got it and you're like, man, that person has the Mercedes, this person has that, I want this, I want that. You better start treating that car that you have now as if it is the Mercedes that you want. Start treating that apartment that you have now like it is the multi-level mansion in California that you want. Talking about myself right now. Start stewarding what you have with respect, and that shows God that you're actually ready for the more. If you're mistreating it, why would God give you more? If you're asking for God to give you another child and you want a son, maybe you have girls and you really want a son, but you treating the girls like they're nothing. Why would God give you a son? Because he's looking at how you treat your daughters, and he's like, I don't know if I can trust you with anything else. Or you're asking for the big family, the husband and the wife, but you treat your own family like trash, and you lose your temper with them, and you call them names. Why would he give you more people to hurt? That don't make sense. So check yourself. And I'm checking myself too. This ain't just about you. Checking myself too. And so breaking that down a bit more, like, okay, how, Diamond? Like, what does that mean? Number one is practicing the gratitude by reminiscing on what it was like before you got the thing that you are now praying for God to expand. Okay? So, for example, if you have a business, remember what it was like before you got the business, when you were praying and pleading for that business and you wanted it to come into fruition. You wanted to get the LLC. You wanted to get your first client. Remember what it felt like when you were there, and you'll start appreciating where you are now more. Remember what it felt like when you were fasting and praying and believing for just one client, and you'll appreciate the 5 clients that you have now, instead of disregarding them and saying, oh, it's just 5 clients, it's just 5 viewers, it's just 4 consistent customers. You'll appreciate them more if you remember where you're coming from. And then number 2, treating whatever you have now like it is what you were praying for. So I kind of jumped the gun and said that already, but as I was saying, if you follow me on Instagram, you saw me drop a video. I was driving my beautiful, sexy Toyota Camry, aka Jada Jade Sport. I was driving it as if it was a GTR, and I was making noises like pew, 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 pew. Granted, I would not drive on the road like that, maybe, but I started practicing treating my car, taking care of it, wiping it down, taking care of the leather, cleaning it out, polishing it, whatever. I started treating it like it's that GTR. I don't just see the Toyota Camry. I remind myself of what it was like before I got the Toyota Camry. I remind myself of what it was like when I was praying for a new car. I had to keep myself in that mindset, and then as I'm doing that. Also, what would I do if I did have the Mercedes, if I did have the S-Class, the GTR, the whatever it is that you're wanting? What would it be like if I actually had it? Probably would be a lot more attentive in its maintenance. I would probably be excited to go get in it and not just like getting in this rust bucket. I'd be walking with gratefulness, speaking with gratefulness, treating it as if it is something that God entrusted to me. Same thing with the job. If you follow me on TikTok, you may have saw the video that I did, and I was like, thank you God for this job, thank you God for this job, thank you God for this job. That was real. That was funny for y'all, hee hee ha ha for y'all, but for me, that was a serious moment of affirmation, because that's what I've been doing daily, is reminding myself to be grateful for what God has given me. And I had to remind myself when times are feeling very frustrating and uncomfortable. There was a time when I was praying to get this job. There was a time when I was praying to have my own money so that I can afford the things that I need and afford my expenses. So think about that when you are trying to treat what you already have like what it is that you're believing God for and praying God for. And then lastly, plan, visualize, and prepare. So you're praying for the more, but what are you doing to prepare for the more? Are you saving and investing your money? Are you taking time to look over your finances? Are you making sure that your credit score is where it needs to be to get that house? Are you making this whatever sacrifices you need in order to get the thing that you want? Keeping those things in mind. And then on top of that, when you're like an example of praying and planning for a marriage, how are you stewarding whatever family you have? How are you stewarding yourself now? Sorry, had two different thoughts. When you are praying for the marriage, how are you stewarding and preparing yourself now? Build a skill, develop communication skills, go to therapy so you can work on that emotional regulation and controlling your temper and your communication. Write out what your non-negotiables are so you know ahead of time what they are when you do go on that date with your future husband or future wife, so that you are able to already be prepared. Stay ready so you don't have to get ready, right? And part of this preparation and visualizing it is praying with belief. Sometimes we pray with hope that it'll happen. So not just knowing in your head and hoping like, I know God can do it. I know it's possible. That's half belief. Belief is, I will have this, I will get this, I will accomplish this, I will receive this husband, wife, I will receive that job opportunity, my business will XYZ. Believe it. Don't just know that it's possible, because that's when you plan with faith. Step all the way into it. And I'm just going to leave you guys right there. High and dry, just like that. Boom, mic drop. But I hope that this just helps someone gain some perspective. I hope it blesses somebody and transforms how you see your life and your circumstance. And if nothing else, remember, faith helps.